Yes, a very good morning to all of you. Right, so let's discuss the MCQs in the RTP May 21. Right, so May 21 RTP. Let us look into the MCQs over there. Right, so first one, the integrated case scenario. Suresh and Company, a partnership firm. Right, so we are discussing the MCQs in the RTP May 2021. Okay. Right, so Suresh and Company, a partnership firm, has been appointed for the 7th consecutive year as the statutory auditor of Alkis Limited, an unlisted public company for the financial year 2021. Suresh is the engagement partner for the audit assignment of Alkis Limited. The engagement team, before starting the assignment, was made to read the policies and procedures designed to achieve the desired quality control with respect to the type of assignment being undertaken. Mr. Suresh referred the engagement letter signed with the management initially and was considering whether there was a requirement to send a new engagement letter in light of the following circumstances in the company during financial year 2021. And in SA 210, we talk about circumstances which warrant the auditor to send a new engagement letter in case of a recurring audit. And we talk about 7 changes and 1 misunderstanding over there. Okay, right. So considering whether there was a requirement to send a new engagement letter, 2 senior whole-time directors of the company have retired out of total 5 directors. 40% stake in the company was held by promoters, which was reduced to 5% by selling shares to the general public. 1 more factory unit was set up in Gorakhpur this year. Management has requested to cover 90% of the transactions with respect to each revenue line item. This time, instead of 80% of the transaction as was set out in the audit plan, considering the materiality and other factors. Okay, the following data is presented from the audited financial statements of Alkis Limited for the financial year 1920. Paid up share capital 8 crore, turnover 55 crore, outstanding borrowing 14 crore, outstanding public deposit 28 crore. Mr. Suresh, while preparing a report under Section 143 of the Companies Act 2013, made a statement with respect to the remuneration paid by Alkis Limited to one of its directors, Mr. Mahesh, was in excess of the limit laid down under Section 197 and also gave such other details as prescribed. Right, so remuneration paid to one of the directors in excess of the limit under Section 197. Mr. Suresh, for additional reporting purpose, while auditing with respect to compliance with CARO 16, observe the following relevant to 3.7, para 3.7 of CARO 2016. Yes, 3.7 clause 7 is regarding the statutory dues, the undisputed statutory dues and the disputed statutory dues. Right, so undisputed regularity of payment and more than 6 months. Undisputed statutory dues, the amount involved and the forum where the dispute is pending. Okay, statutory dues, undisputed amount, date payable, date paid. Income tax demand for AY 1819 2 lakh, date payable 25th of September, paid 28th of March. GST 1.5 lakh, 3rd October, paid on 4th April. Customs duty 0.80, paid payable on 20th September, paid on 10th of April. And Provident Fund 0.45, 12th October, not paid till date. Also, a representation was made to the GST department for waiving a penalty of 1 lakh for late payment of the GST demand. Right, representation was made. What do we say? A mere representation to the department does not constitute a dispute. The board of Alkis Limited declared interim dividend of rupees 20 lakh on 20th of May 2021 to its 180 shareholders out of the surplus in the profit and loss account, and such dividend amount has been deposited in the separate bank with a branch of State Bank of India. Okay, dividend amounting to 1 lakh was not claimed by a shareholder, Mr. Rohit, till 19th of June 2021, and so the said amount of 1 lakh was transferred to unpaid dividend account on 31st of July 2020. On the basis of the above mentioned facts, you are required to answer the following MCQs. Okay, so that is first the integrated case scenario which is given over there. Which of the following option is correct with respect to Alkis Limited? Right, Alkis Limited needs to form an audit committee for the provisions relating to internal audit as well as rotation of auditor are applicable to Alkis Limited. So now when I read this option, I come to know that we need to check whether it needs to constitute an audit committee. Yes, so section 177, second one, whether it is required to appoint an internal auditor, right? Section 138, and then rotation of the auditor, section 139 subsection 2, right? So these three provisions we need to check and then accordingly decide whether audit committee is to be constituted, internal auditor is to be appointed, and whether rotation of auditor provisions are applicable to the entity or not. Okay, so audit committee, section 177. And what is the applicability of audit committee as per section 177, right? What does it say? Apart from the listed companies, every public company. And section 177, what does it say? Every public company having the paid up share capital of more than or equal to 10 crore or having the turnover of more than or equal to 100 crore or having in the aggregate the LBDD, loans, borrowing, debenture, deposits of more than or equal to 50 crore. That is section 177. Right, then we have section 138, which is regarding the internal audit. Whereas for listed companies, then unlisted public companies. For unlisted public companies, if the deposits are more than or equal to 25 crore at any point of time during the preceding financial year, or the paid up share capital is more than or equal to 50 crore as at the end of the preceding financial year, or the borrowings are more than 100 crore at any point of time during the preceding financial year, or the turnover is more than or equal to 200 crore during the preceding financial year. Right, so that is section 138 for the unlisted public companies. Then we have section 139, which is regarding the 139 subsection 2, rotation of the company auditor. Right, so again, listed companies always applicable. Unlisted public companies having paid up share capital of more than or equal to 10 crore and unlisted public companies. Then second one, the private companies having the paid up share capital of more than or equal to 50 crore. Or all the companies having the borrowings deposits of more than, deposits of more than or equal to 50 crore. Right, I cannot appoint an individual for more than one term of 5 consecutive years, cannot appoint a firm for more than 2 terms of 5 consecutive years. Right, so what I have done over here, I have just noted down the applicability. Now let us check it based on the facts of the case. And section 177, right, paid up share capital 10 crore. So this condition over here only 8 crore, so not fulfilled. Turnover 55 crore. What is the requirement? 100 crore, so not fulfilled. Right, now outstanding borrowing deposit. So loans, borrowing, debenture, deposit all put together. How much? 14 plus 28, that is 42 crore. So again it should be more than or equal to 50 crore. So none of the conditions are being fulfilled. So are they required to constitute an audit committee? No. And are not required to constitute the audit committee. Right, next one, section 138. And 138, what does it say? Deposits of more than or equal to 25 crore. Now here it says outstanding public deposit of 28 crore. So more than or equal to 25 crore. Any one of the condition fulfilled and the company is required to appoint an internal auditor. So section 138, are they required to appoint internal auditor? Yes. Right, then section 139 subsection 2, rotation of company auditor. Unlisted public companies having paid up share capital of more than or equal to 10 crore. Your paid up share capital is only 8 crore. So condition 1 not fulfilled. Second condition is for private companies, so not relevant in this case. And all companies having borrowings or deposits of more than or equal to 50 crore. But here how much is the borrowing or deposit again? 14, 28, 42 crore. So again the condition not fulfilled. So rotation of company auditor provisions also not applicable. And so audit committee not required to form an audit committee. Right, rotation of company auditor, again the rotation of company auditor provisions are not applicable. But internal auditor, are they required to appoint an internal auditor? Yes, they are required to appoint an internal auditor. And a chartered accountant or cost accountant, whether engaged in practice or not, he may or may not be an employee of the company. Right, or what you say, chartered accountant, cost accountant, whether engaged in practice or not, or any other professional also, as may be decided by the boards. Okay, so now let's look into the option. Right, so needs to form an audit committee? No, so that option is anyways not good for us. And a needs to form an audit committee? No. Okay, then need not form an audit committee can be in a shortlisted one. Need not form an audit committee? Yes. Needs to form an audit committee? Again, no. Okay. Now, needs to form an audit committee for the provisions relating to the internal audit is not applicable. However, the provisions with respect to rotation are applicable. Rather, it is reverse. Right, what is C option? Provisions relating to rotation of auditor is not applicable to Alkis Limited. However, the provisions with respect to internal audit are applicable to it. So section 138 is applicable, but section 139 subsection 2 regarding rotation of company auditor not applicable, and they are also not required to form an audit committee. Yes, all good? Okay, next one. Under which section of the audit report Suresh needs to report with respect to excess remuneration being paid to Mr. Mahesh? And excess managerial remuneration is in excess of the limits under section 197. Right, so other matter paragraph, report on other legal and regulatory requirement, basis for qualified opinion, auditor's responsibility for the audit of the financial statements. Right, so no, not other matter paragraph, not basis for qualified opinion, not auditor's responsibility to obtain reasonable assurance that financial statements are free from material misstatement. It is other legal regulatory requirement under section 143. 143 subsection 3. And whether any managerial remuneration paid, whether it is within the limit or is it in excess of the limit. Right, so other legal regulatory requirement. So that has been recently said now. Okay, now the managerial remuneration, whether it is within the limit or in excess of the limit, is required to be reported under the other reporting responsibilities. That is the report on other legal and regulatory requirement. Okay. Next one. What total amount of statutory dues needs to be reported by Mr. Suresh as per para 3 of CARO? Right, so what total amount of statutory dues needs to be reported? Right, so 2.75, 0.80, 2.80, 2.30. Okay, right, so what are the options they've given over there? 2.75, 0.80. And a 2.75, then they have given the option as the 0.80, and then after that 2.80 and 2.30, and a 2.80 and 2.30. Okay, now what does clause 7a say? Regularity of payment. Is the company regular, generally regular, not regular in depositing the undisputed statutory dues? And second, those undisputed statutory dues which are outstanding as on the date of the balance sheet for a period of more than 6 months from the date they became payable. And that's the wording of clause 7a. And outstanding as on the date of balance sheet means as on 31st of March for a period of more than 6 months from the date they became payable. That is those which are outstanding on or before 30th of September. And outstanding on or before 30th of September. Right, so now here this is date payable 3rd of October, 12th of October. So anyways it is not, it's 3rd October. So okay, if I say October, so November, December, January, February, March, April. And November, December, January, February, March, April. So it is not 6 months. It is as on the balance sheet date, it should be outstanding for more than 6 months. So it is 3rd of October. So it's not outstanding for more than 6 months. 12th of October. So again not outstanding for more than 6 months. But 25th September, 20th September. So October, November, December, January, February, March. So here it is more than 6 months. And 31st March only it is outstanding for more than 6 months. Okay. Now outstanding as on the date of the balance sheet. Now this is outstanding for on or before 30th of September, but it has been paid before 31st of March. So is it outstanding as on the date of the balance sheet? No. Second one too, it is not outstanding for more than 6 months. Fourth one again also not outstanding for more than 6 months. So no question of checking whether it is outstanding as on the date of balance sheet. And it should be outstanding for more than 6 months. And as on the date of the balance sheet. Right. So if I look over here, this 20th of September. Yes. Was it outstanding for more than 6 months? Yes. And was it outstanding as on the balance sheet date also? Yes. 31st of March. It has been paid on 10th of April. But 31st March, was it outstanding for more than 6 months? Yes. So 0.80. and a 0.80. Okay, right. Then also a representation was made to GST department for waiving a penalty of 1 lakh for late payment of GST demand. Right. So here just a representation was made. A mere representation does not constitute a dispute, and there is no due date or so for payment over here. So that is anyways not to be considered. Right. So now we have the 4 options over here: 2.75, 0.80, 2.80, and 2.30. Right. So 0.80. 0.80 is the correct option for us. 0.80 would be the correct option. Right. So B is the correct option. Next one, how much amount of interest Alkys Limited would be liable to pay with respect to unpaid dividend amount? Unpaid dividend amount, how much amount of interest Alkys Limited will have to pay, because it's a one shareholder, Rohit, and a dividend amount of 1 lakh was not claimed by a shareholder, Rohit, till 19th of June. And so the said amount of 1 lakh was transferred to the unpaid dividend account on 31st of July 2020. And it was transferred on 31st of July. Right, so 575, 1216, 1726, and then 1151. Right, we'll see. And then this again a related question for dividend only. By what date the amount of interim dividend should have been deposited in a scheduled bank after being declared? And also by what date the unpaid or the unclaimed dividend account should have been transferred to the unpaid dividend account? So 2 dates they are asking. What are the 2 dates they are asking? Should have been deposited in a scheduled bank after being declared. And also by what date the unpaid unclaimed dividend should have been transferred to the unpaid dividend account. Right. So what are the provisions of section 123 and section 124 of the Companies Act 2013? Okay, dividends once declared within 5 days, it has to be transferred to a separate bank account. Dividend once declared has to be transferred within 5 days to a separate bank account. Right. So here on which date the dividend was declared? Right, 20th of May. Right, so 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. Within 5 days, it has to be transferred to a separate bank account. Right, so 25th of May. So 30th May, 27th May, anyways you are out. Right, so now only 2 options left: 25th of May and 24th of June, and 25th of May and 26th of June. Right, so within 5 days, it is to be transferred to a separate bank account. And then what does it say? Dividend once declared within 30 days, it should be paid to the registered shareholder. So again, what date it was declared? 20th of May. So within 30 days, it should be paid to the registered shareholder. And if not paid within 30 days, then after the expiry of 30 days, within 7 days, it should be transferred to the unpaid unclaimed dividend account. And after, if it is not paid within 30 days, after the expiry of 30 days, within 7 days, it should be transferred to the unpaid unclaimed dividend account. Okay, so 20th of May. So by 19th of June, and by 19th of June, it should be paid. And by 19th of June, it should be paid. And now not paid by 19th of June to the registered shareholder, then within 7 days after the expiry of 30 days. So 19th of June. So now after 30 days, within 7 days, it should be transferred to the unpaid unclaimed dividend account. Right. So 20th of June, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. Right. So by 26th of June 2021. Right. So no 24th of June. So it has to be 26th of June 2021. Right, everybody, are you getting this? Right, within 5 days, it has to be transferred to a separate bank account after being declared. And when to be transferred to the unpaid dividend account? Right, when to be transferred? Within 7 days after the expiry of 30 days. Within 7 days after the expiry of 30 days. And now, how much is the unpaid dividend amount over here? 1 lakh. And 1 lakh was not claimed by the registered shareholder, by the shareholder till 19th of June 2021. And so the amount of 1 lakh was transferred to the unpaid dividend account on 31st of July. It should be say 2021. And it was transferred on 31st of July 2021. Right. So by what date would have been paid? It should have been paid by 26th of June. And by what date it has been paid? Transferred to the unpaid dividend account on 31st of July. Right. So when it should have been paid? On 26th of June. Right. So 27, 28, 29, 30. Right. So 4 days of June and then 31 days of July. Right. So there is a 35 days delay in transferring the amount to the unpaid unclaimed dividend account. And what does section 124 say? If any default default is made in transferring the total amount in subsection 1 or any part thereof to the unpaid dividend account, it shall pay from the date of such default interest on so much of the amount which has not been transferred to the said account at the rate of 12% per annum, and the interest accruing on such amount shall inure to the benefit of the members of the company. Right, so in our example, how much is the delay over there? There is a 35 days delay, and what is the rate of interest? 12% per annum. And what is the amount of the unpaid dividend over here? 1 lakh was not claimed by the shareholder, so it should have been transferred by 26th of June to a separate bank account, but when it has been to a unclaimed unpaid dividend account, but it has been transferred on 31st of July, right? So that is why there is a 35 days default, right? Interest at the rate of 12%, right? So 1 lakh into 12% is 1 lakh is 12,000 for the entire year, right? Now how many days default is over there? 35 days default, right? So 12,000 into 35 divided by 365. And that's how this 1150 has come. And 12,000 and 1 lakh into 12%, that is 12,000 for the entire year, the interest. Now that 12,000 into 35 divided by 365, that is 1151. Right? So what is the amount of interest? 575, 1216, 1726 or 1151. Right? So it is 1151. How that 1151 has come? 12,000, because for 1 lakh into 12% is 12,000 into 35 divided by 365, that is equal to 1151. Okay, right, so that completes our areas, the first case scenario. Now coming to the second one, right? So if you look over here, now in the beginning of the question, they had given in the beginning of the case study over there, they had given that circle, where there is a requirement to send a new engagement letter, one more factory unit, 40% stake, 2 senior whole-time director, management has requested to cover 90% instead of 80%. Now somehow these parts are not getting covered in the answer, in the MCQs which are being asked. They are not having any relevance as such in the MCQs which are being asked. Okay, right, so always what we do a first reading of the entire case study, and then after that, we first start looking into what are the questions, and then whatever are the questions, that relevant part of the case study, we again go back to. Okay, right, so now coming to the next case scenario. Victor and Company, a reputed chartered accountant firm, is appointed as a statutory auditor of Copperman Creations Limited. The company is into manufacturing of the robotic products. The company has advanced in all its endeavors by supplying million copper suits. The company has started the production of the Virgin 10 under its flagship and tags it as "Why to worry about a vehicle when you have a steel man?" The main idea of the company evolved after the promoter watched the Marvel series Iron Man. The product has been promoted by Robert Downey Jr. as its product brand ambassador. The company expects itself to manufacture these prototypes and expects the old prototypes to be obsolete due to the demand for Virgin 10. Each version of the product has a separate department and promote their sales under the single flagship of the Copperman. And thus the managerial decision making is left to each Virgin manager. You have been assigned the fixed assets area to Mr. Mama Mia, and he came out with the following points. Okay. Fixed assets area to Mr. Mama Mia, and he came out to you with the following points. You need to answer the questions raised by him and go through the notes prepared to reach a reasonable conclusion over property, plant and equipment, FSLI, that is the financial statement line item. The company is holding the property in its name in Andaman and Nicobar, while the land is registered in another person's name, right? So the land is registered in another person's name. And so title deeds of immovable properties, are they held in the name of the company? If not, provide the details, and it comes under clause 1C of para 3 of CARO. The property is in dispute for the last 20 years. This is the major plant for the company, and it is the critical success factor for the client. The company's 80% of the revenue is derived from this factory, the land of which is registered in another person's name, and there is a dispute. When inquired with management, it would have to incur huge cost to relocate, and the present advantageous conditions of the plant are very critical for the product manufactured. The company has not conducted the physical verification of fixed assets since last 10 years, but it has conducted the verification of other locations every year. And again, CARO says that physical verification of fixed assets, whether it has been conducted by the management at reasonable interval. And what does the guidance note on Caro say? That reasonable interval if the time gap between two physical verification of fixed assets is not more than 3 years. Okay, right. When inquired with management, the company explained it is highly impossible as the plant is 24/7 running and it couldn't be halted as the restart of operations will cost huge amount and the month's time to get the company back to current position. So it says it's operating 24/7 when to do the physical verification. The audit team has come across a transaction where the company is enjoying the property rent-free. The audit team is of the opinion that the provisions of Benami Transaction Prohibition Act 1988 might apply in such a scenario. This could be evaluated as a part of the Caro reporting. No other procedures in this regard need to be performed. Right? So now in Caro 16, there is no, provision for reporting regarding the Benami transactions and a Benami property over there. But in Caro 20, but anyways for May 21, Caro 20 is not applicable. But Caro 20 has a reference in clause 1 regarding the whether any proceedings have been initiated or are pending, right, against the company under the Benami Transaction Prohibition Act. The details of the same, have they been disclosed in the financial statements, whether any proceedings have been initiated or are pending. Now here it doesn't seem to be that any proceedings are initiated or pending. Right? And anyways, in Caro 16 there is no such provision regarding the Benami, whether any proceedings have been initiated or pending. Okay, right. The company follows the depreciation policy as per Schedule 2 across all the factories, even when the factory at the Andaman and Nicobar is the only factory that runs 24/7. Right, so for all their different factories, they are following the Schedule 2. Yes, whereas Andaman and Nicobar is operating, the plant factory over there is operating 24/7. The useful life has been taken as it is mentioned in Schedule 2 without modifications, and the company's future prospects are good. There are no impairment indication. On the basis of the above mentioned facts, you are required to choose the most appropriate answer for the following MCQ. The audit team has asked you about the Benami transaction. Okay, there is no requirement for the auditor to report the transaction as there are no proceedings initiated or pending. That's what I told you in Caro 20. And they say whether any proceedings have been initiated or pending against the company under the Benami Transaction Prohibition Act. Okay, right. As the auditor is not sure about the transaction and did not gather the proper evidence, he can ignore the transaction. The auditor needs to obtain the representation letter and note the same as a follow-up point for the next year audit. So it says ignore and take a representation and keep it a note for the same as a follow-up point for the next year audit. Okay, the auditor needs to obtain the additional evidence about the transaction. He needs to assess the situation as its impact over the financial statements along with the consideration of 250 laws and regulation. Thus, he should consider the seriousness of the matter and should assess the impact of the same over the report, even though it is not required to be reported as a part of Caro. Okay, the auditor needs to report such matter as a part of Caro as it might turn into a potential issue under the Benami Transaction Prohibition Act. As it might turn into a potential issue. No. Whenever proceedings are initiated or pending, that time we can see. The auditor can ignore the transaction. No. Right, what does it say? There is no requirement for the auditor to report as there are no proceedings initiated or pending. So no requirement for the auditor to report. So it says, yes, though there is no requirement for the auditor to report, but should he consider the seriousness of the matter and assess the impact of the same over the report? Right, though no reporting is required under Caro, the auditor needs to obtain the additional evidence about the transaction, what they've given in the question over there. Right, or no other procedures in this regard need to be performed. Right, so it says you need to consider the seriousness of the matter. Right, so it says as no reporting is required, no need to check. No, the auditor needs to obtain the additional evidence about the transaction. He needs to assess the situation as its impact over the financial statements along with the consideration of 250. He should consider the seriousness of the matter and should assess the impact of the same over the report, even though it is not required to be reported as a part of Caro. Okay, next one, question number 7. The audit team has asked you about the implications of the dispute on the property, plant and equipment and whether any additional considerations or provisions as reporting are needed for the same. Andaman and Nicobar property, they said the property is in dispute for the past 20 years. right? So whether any additional consideration, right? The dispute on account of property, plant and equipment is a civil case, and one or the other company may face such consequences. There's no additional audit procedures are required. The auditor may report this fact under CARO. In the title deeds of immovable properties, there is a dispute. It says one or the other company may face such consequences. No additional audit procedures are required. Okay. The property, plant and equipment is in dispute, and the company has to incur huge cost to identify the ideal plant with the same condition. Thus, this might amount to material uncertainty on the company's side to continue as a going concern. Thus, he needs to report the same. However, he need not report under CARO. So, first one it says report under CARO. Second it says need not report under CARO. Next one, the property, plant and equipment is under dispute. The auditor needs to report it as a key audit matter and request the company to disclose it in the notes to account in a single line that the property is in dispute. He need not report under CARO. Right, so no reporting under CARO, title deeds of immovable properties. The company's major line of business is from the factory, which is under dispute. The audit team needs to consider the status of the case and assess its implication over the going concern assumption of the company if it loses its case. You know why? Because it says it's a very important, 80% of the revenue is derived from this factory. So if they, there is a dispute regarding the ownership of the land and tomorrow they are not allowed to run the factory, right? It might have an impact on the going concern assumption if it loses the case. It should also report it as a part of 143.3 about the company's financial transactions or matters which have an adverse impact on the functioning of the company. And we say 143.3, there is one point over there, whether any qualifications, adverse is any factors which may have an adverse effect on the functioning of the company, right? So that's going concern issue. It also needs to be reported as per CARO. Right. So now need not be reported under CARO, need not be reported under CARO. It says one or the other company may face such consequences. No additional audit procedures are required. Not good. Now this is very good. Right, see, second point they said that you need to check for material uncertainty, but they say need not report under CARO, so that's why wrong. Right, so the company's major line of business is from the factory, which is under dispute. The audit team needs to consider the status of the case and assess its implication over the going concern assumption if it loses its case. It should also report under 143.3 about the financial transactions or matters which have an adverse effect, and it also needs to report as per CARO. Okay, the audit team has asked you about the impairment of the assets of the company. The company has no impairment condition as the company expects positive future cash flows from the assets and thus no need to assess the impairment. The company needs to assess the impairment condition for the assets and need to assess the fair value of the assets used to generate the income from the older version. The auditor needs to take the decision based on the cash inflows of the company as a whole for the existence of the impairment condition. Cash inflows of the company as a whole, fair value of the assets. Okay, there exists an impairment condition as the company does not expect much business from the older version due to the anticipation of the high demand of the new product. The company needs to assess the cash inflows at each version level. And a cash inflows here they are saying for the company as a whole. Here it says cash flows inflows at each version level. And the company did not assess impairment of assets as this is very common in dynamic industries where the older version becomes obsolete when the new one is introduced by the company. It says very common for dynamic industries where the older version becomes obsolete when the new one is introduced by the company. So what? Impairment we need to assess. Okay, so there is no impairment condition? No. There is no impairment condition? No. Now, what does it say? Fair value of assets used to generate income. No, we have to check the cash generating capacity when we have to check for impairment. And not cash inflows of the company as a whole. We have to check the cash inflows at each version level to determine the impairment of the assets. Right, so there exists an impairment condition once the company does not expect much business from the older version due to the anticipation of the huge demand of the new product. Right, now if you see towards the end of the fact over there, they've given company's future prospects are good and there are no impairment indication. And that's given towards the end of the case study over there. But in the beginning they've given this point over there. No, the company expects itself to manufacture these prototypes and expect that the old prototypes to be obsolete due to the demand of the version 10. So that gives us an indication that the old prototypes you need to check for impairment. So each virgin level, cash inflows at each of the virgin level, right? You need to check for the impairment. Right, so C is the option. Question number 9. The audit team is skeptical about the depreciation policy followed by the company for the Andaman and Nicobar plant. So Andaman Nicobar plant also what they are using, following the same depreciation policy which they are following for other factories also. And a depreciation policy as per Schedule 3 across all the factories, even when the factory at Andaman and Nicobar is the only factory that runs 24/7. Right? So different geographical conditions, different usage of the assets. Can you be using the different estimated useful life of the asset, different rate of depreciation? Yes. Okay, as the company is following the Schedule 3, as the company is following the Schedule 2, the depreciation policy and the useful life is in line with the Companies Act 2013. Hence, the company's depreciation policy is good to go. Okay, good to go. As the company is operating the plant 24/7, it will be eligible for extra shift depreciation as per Schedule 2. For the assets where the condition of extra shift depreciation does not exist, the company will be eligible to claim 50% extra depreciation as per Schedule 2. Okay, so extra shift depreciation, yes, and then it says if it is not eligible for extra shift, then claim 50% extra depreciation. As the Schedule 3 is applicable for the whole company, the policy including the useful life for the asset needs to be same. There cannot be different useful life for different assets across different locations. Depreciation policy of the company is good to go. So no, you say you're not good to go. You're not good to go. Okay, as the company is operating the plant 24/7, at least these 2 points they are making a reference to that 24/7 ka fact. It will be referred to as a continuous process plant. For the assets where the condition of extra shift depreciation does not exist, the company will not be eligible to claim 100% extra depreciation as per Schedule 2. Why? Because this fulfills the criteria of the continuous process plant. It is operating 24/7. Right? So no extra shift depreciation. It says it's a continuous process plant. Right? For the assets where the condition of extra shift, this is not extra shift, this is continuous process plant. And also it's 24/7, not that instead of 8 hours they are operating 12 hours or 16 hours, they are operating 24/7. Right? Does not exist. The company will not be eligible to claim the 100% extra depreciation as per Schedule 2. Okay, the audit team has raised a concern over hiring an international brand ambassador for an Indian product and raised concerns over the contract for the same. And they had given in the beginning over there, right, that the company appointed, the product was promoted by Robert Downey Jr., right, as its product brand ambassador, for the, inspired by the Marvel series Iron Man, right, so they appointed Robert Downey Jr. as its product brand ambassador. Okay, so the audit team has raised a question over hiring an international brand ambassador. The auditor has no role to play in such scenario, as the selection of brand ambassador and the running of the business lies with the management. And we've always studied the statement that the auditor is not concerned with the propriety of business conduct. Right, so auditor has no role to play in such scenario, as the selection of brand ambassador and the running of the business lies with the management. The auditor needs to go through the agreement entered, payments made, etc. Okay, the auditor needs to inform the central government, as this might constitute a serious non-compliance of laws and regulation. The auditor shall assess the integrity of the management about the appointment of a foreign brand ambassador. So it says, how come you appointed foreign brand ambassador, and inform central government integrity of management just because they appointed a foreign brand ambassador. Okay, as per 250, consideration of laws and regulation in an audit of financial statements, the auditor needs to assess such matter, as it is a legal violation to hire an international brand ambassador ignoring the local people. The audit team needs to consider the same and report in its audit report about such implications. So it says local, no foreign brand ambassador, legal violation. Okay, the auditor needs to qualify its audit report. Qualify. As the company is against the vocal for local policy. And Atmanirbhar, vocal for local policy. The auditor needs to highlight the same in its audit report, as this may lead to a serious brand deterioration of the company. And hats off to the person who makes the wrong options. More creativity required over there, for creating the wrong options. Okay, so what does it say? Inform central government. This is legal violation. Then they say vocal for local policy, serious brand deterioration. It says just cool. The auditor has no role to play in such a scenario, as the selection of brand ambassador and the running of the business lies with the management. The auditor needs to go through agreement entered, payment made, etc. That's it. Right, so those are the two integrated case scenarios. Now let's come to the independent MCQs. Anant and Company is the auditor of ST Insurance Company. The insurance company is also involved in reinsurance business, and necessary provision for reinsurance premium has been made in the books of account. The insurance company is into a reinsurance whereby their contract relates to one particular risk and is expressed in the reinsurance policy. Each transaction is negotiated individually, and each party has a free choice, that is for the insurance company to offer and for the reinsurer to accept. What kind of a reinsurance business is the insurance company into? Each transaction is negotiated individually. Each transaction, one policy, one risk. This one I want you to reinsure. Reinsurer says no, I don't want to accept this. Then next one, again the insurer says that I want to reinsure, right? Ceding company. So then they say okay, this I will reinsure for you. So each transaction is negotiated individually, right? So facultative reinsurance, stop loss treaty reinsurance, auto for reinsurance, and the proportional treaty reinsurance, right? So facultative, it is the oldest method of reinsurance, right? Here reinsurance is done individually for each policy, right? It is, what is the biggest drawback of this method? The huge volume of work which is involved. But any particular risk which you don't want to cover in the treaty reinsurance, because say there is some abnormal risk over there, that you can get it covered under the facultative reinsurance. And a stop loss, you identify the excess liabilities and accordingly get the reinsurance done. Auto for, again you identify your excess liabilities over and above the surplus treaty, right, and get them reinsured. That is the auto fac or the auto for. And proportional, again it could be the right quota share, surplus, auto for all the pools, and those are the proportional treaty, a predetermined ratio and a predetermined, right? So that's the proportional treaty reinsurance, right? So in this case it is the facultative reinsurance. Okay, and below is an extract from the list of supplier statement as at 31st of March 2020 held by the company and the corresponding payable ledger balance at the same date, along with the commentary on the noted differences, right? So list of supplier statement as at 31st of March along with the corresponding payable ledger balance. Right, so supplier statement balance and the payable ledger balance. So this is as per the statement and this is as per the books of account. And a CT company, right, 80,000 and payable ledger balance 60,000. And Lice company 1,85,000 and input the as per the books of account it is only 1,15,000. The difference in the balance of the SETI company is due to an invoice which is under dispute due to defective goods which were returned on 30th of March. Which of the following audit procedure should be carried out to confirm the balance owing to CT company? The first one, right? So it says as per the company books of account it is only 60,000 which is payable, but we asked the supplier as per you how much it is. He said 80,000. Right, so now why? What is the reason for the difference? It says which is under dispute due to defective goods. So that's why they have not recognized it as a liability. Right, so what audit procedure? Review post year-end credit notes for evidence of acceptance of the return. And so you've done the purchase return, so credit notes for the same. Okay, inspect pre-year-end goods return note in respect of the items sent back to the supplier. So obviously the 20,000 goods would be sent back, right? So goods return note, then the credit note for the same. Okay, then inspect post year-end cash book for evidence of that the amount has been settled. Post year-end cash book for evidence that the amount has been settled, but that will not give me any evidence as such for the 31st of March, the discrepancies between the two balance. No, to confirm the balance owing to CT Limited, what are the audit procedure? Right, so 1, 2, 3, 1 and 3, 1 and 2, 2 and 3. right? So 3, what does it say? Inspect post year end cash book for evidence that the amount has been settled. So whatever amount is outstanding, that would be settled. How does that give me evidence regarding the balance which was under dispute? The credit note and the goods return note. These two give me the evidence regarding the difference in the balance as such. So those would be the audit procedure. So wherever there is 3, no. Right? So 1 and 2 only. So 1 and 2 only. Right. So that completes our discussion for the MCQs in the RTP May 21. Okay.